Okay, guys, welcome back. I'm going to get into some asks today, but I'm going to go through these YouTube comments because I'm always amazed at what insightful comments people make on YouTube on my videos. So we'll go through a few of these. Sorry, my thoughts are so fragmented today, but yeah, looking at the RosterCon website, she's talking about Emily and the cons she's been through, too. She's been to 3 cons this year, 2 in Atlanta, where the main TWD filming studio is. She doesn't necessarily have to be in Europe to be filming something, so I talked about that in my last video. And 1 in Germany. Last year, she went to cons in Europe, um, to 3 cons in Europe, none in the US. But if you look at years prior to 2024, she was doing cons all over the US and some of these states. Of course, could be coincidence, but worth noting, I thought, definitely. And you wonder why she's not doing more of them in the United States. That would presumably be cheaper than going to Europe. So thanks for posting that. Okay, I'm getting massive still vibes from some of these screenshots, but most prominent is the marionette show. Those walkers were used as puppets for entertainment, same as the female rich bitch walker was in the golf club in Still. The humans who they once were humiliated, their bodies shamed. I just know Beth would hate seeing people do this. That is an awesome point. I did not think to tie together the marionettes and the rich bitch walker. So, yeah, thank you. I really like that. And it'll be interesting to see. It's a little bit hard to see Daryl's reaction in that scene because he's wearing a mask. That's kind of creepy. But yeah, that's a great insight. So thank you for that. House of the Rising Sun. The song title is a clue. The name Beth means house or home. Now, this is part of why, we talk about the home theory. I mean, I always say that their home isn't necessarily a specific place like Alexandria or Georgia or whatever. It's where their family is, right? So your home is, where the people you love are. And I think this was brought up originally back in season 5 during the Wolf arc when, there was that truck that said, this is how the harvest gets home. Beth's name literally means home, and I probably don't dwell on that quite as much as I should. Anyway, so the name Beth means house or home. Rising sun symbolizes a new beginning, hope. Also, this can be seen as a rebirth or resurrection. So they are telling us with the song choice that this is Beth's resurrection, and she will be revealed this season. Oh, I hope you're right. Really, really hope you're right. But yeah, we have the dawn theme, the sunrise theme around Beth a lot. You had dawn at Grady and all of that. So that's a big theme. And I didn't actually talk about the title of the song when I talked about the song. So great insights there. Thank you. I would assume that the girl he is saving is in the train. The train is going to Madrid being drugged by walkers, and maybe the king is in it as well. Well, cool. That makes sense, right? That's why he would probably attack the train people when he saw them. So yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. Several of us on the Beth Discord were watching Emily's Veeps live stream, and yeah, we all went pretty nuts when she did Be Good. And indeed, it was exactly during the SDCC Comic Con panel. Okay, good, great. So I don't think this could possibly be a coincidence that she just so happened to start singing that song right when the panel was going on. I think that was planned purposely. And why would they do that? Unless, there's some reason to. If she's not coming back, why would they do that? So yeah, I like that we have people who, this is not a theory, actually, this part of it. We have people who are keeping an eye on both and can say definitively that they were playing at the same time in real time. They both started and they were doing both at the same time. So that's a big deal. So thank you for sending that in. Yeah, it's my hope that him grieving Isabelle in season 3, he says it in another interview that he left part of his heart in France, that will open up the conversation that leads to him talking about Beth finally. That maybe Carol actually pushes him to get there. It sounds like Isabelle was kind of like Beth or something like that because Carol instinctively knows that Daryl never got over Beth. You can tell that Norman was really carefully trying to choose his words in that answer. The different people's journey fill the gap line. I didn't read that right. The different people's journey fill that gap line was interesting that he said. Yeah, so this came from one of the interviews that came out of Comic-Con, and yeah, it definitely was. He was talking about that. He was talking about Daryl's inner arc and his journey, and yeah, definitely. So that's cool. That's a good idea that maybe that will push him to finally talk about Beth. I hope so. I hope you're right. Totally unrelated comment here, but I just heard that Ride with Norman Reedus season 7 will be airing back to back with Daryl Dixon season 3. Scott is going to be a guest on one of the episodes. Scott doesn't even ride motorcycles. I'm very curious as to which episode of season 3 his appearance is going to coincide with. What I'm hinting at here is if, say, we get a Beth reveal sometime during the season, having Gimple come on ride immediately after to start doing some explaining would make a ton of sense. Melissa McBride is also appearing in the episode and gave a weird comment about it in one of the Comic-Con interviews. Something like being so happy to be part of that episode in particular, and then giving a side eye to everyone. Yeah, no, I agree. Again, you kind of have to watch this interview to get the full effect, but um, yeah, they were definitely being like hinting at things about it, and of course, we can't prove that it's a Beth hint, but they're definitely hinting at things that are coming. And yeah, I thought, I had a few people send me that and think that too, that it was weird that she talked about this episode in particular. What is she talking about? And if Gimple doesn't ride motorcycles, then what is he going to be doing in the episode? So it'll be really interesting to watch. So thanks for sending that in. Old video, but I just saw a comment by Norman Reedus in an interview at Comic-Con 2025, where he likens Daryl's romantic relationships to penguins. Once he's in love forever, and it just reminded me of this episode where he randomly is holding a penguin at the beginning. I don't know what episode that is. Maybe if you know which episode that is, let me know. Yeah, but this is actually, so when I read this is a really good point. He said this before, and I just hadn't thought about this in a long time, but back during season 4 and 5, there were quite a few memes that just, had some picture of Daryl and had this quote from him. And I think the quote would have been, long before 2025. This would have been a while ago. But he said, if Daryl falls in love with you, he's going to love you for the rest of his life. And everyone just kind of went, "Aw," and so then it became a meme, of course, as it always does. And the interesting thing about that, though, is they are hinting at it's not even a hint, they're outright telling us something about him by saying that. So I keep saying, things like, um, we'll know by the end of season 4, by the end of the spinoff, who his soulmate is. And if it's not Beth, then, I'll shut up about it. But this kind of is proof that it couldn't be anybody but her, because she's the only one that they have really said that he's fallen for. And maybe they haven't used the exact wording that, Daryl was in love with Beth, but they kind of have. Norman confirmed that Daryl had romantic feelings for her and, thought she had a crush on him. And yeah, I mean, he had these, the relationship with Leah, and he was interested in Isabelle, but Isabelle's never really went anywhere. And Leah was Leah. So she's the only one that I think you could say that about, that he actually fell in love with her. And it's like, why? It just doesn't make sense any other way. If you're going to do a whole spin-off for this character, and you're very much pushing the idea that we're going to find his happy ending by the end of the spin-off, why would you do it with someone he wasn't in love with, right? And why would, we know that the writers and the powers that be in Gimple, they are very pay attention and are very strict about what the actors can and can't say. They give them talking points and stuff. So they obviously let Norman say that, that if Daryl falls in love with you, he's going to love you for the rest of his life. Why would they have him say that if it wasn't relevant to some story they were planning, right? Um, and I have no idea exactly when he said that. Like I said, it was a long time ago. I remember seeing those memes during season 4 and 5, so it might have even been before that he said that. But they're telling us that whoever he falls in love with, he's never going to fall out of love with them. Um, and so you're saying that now he's real he likens his relationship to penguins because they mate for life, right? Yeah, I mean, all I'm saying is that that's a really good point and something that I hadn't really thought of. How could it be anybody except Beth? There's like no one else that actually fills that criteria. So really excellent point. Thank you for sending that in. I just hadn't thought of that at all. You pay attention to so much of the entire TWD universe. I'm not surprised by the commitment here. Well done, and you have a very pleasant voice. Thank you. I appreciate that. I used to be really self-conscious about my voice, but then I started podcasting and that went away pretty quickly. So I appreciate that. Oh, this one was super interesting. I do agree. Daryl had to experience the toxic relationship and the one when he's not super in love, but more like settling with someone who is, good enough. Both females were close enough to the real thing, yet so different. It's interesting, though, that people do not catch up on both love interests having similar features to Beth. We don't know how Beth would turn out to be when she'd be back, but I'd go as far as saying Leah was Beth's dark side, Isabelle the light, and the two halves make a whole, a Beth, like yin and yang. Okay. I'm going to say something to you that was actually written on one of my Tumblr posts early on, and I like fell off my couch laughing when somebody said this. It was a meta that I wrote probably within the first year after Coda, and somebody just wrote, man, let's see if I can get it right. They said, I think they said people are putting some college level psychology into the shit or something like that. And I just started laughing. Like it was somebody who was so shocked by the analysis I was doing that it was. Anyway, I'm going to say that this is like doctorate level psychology and analysis that you're doing. So this is fantastic. I love it. I hadn't thought of it quite like that. It seems like some people have talked about the dark and the light with Leah and Isabelle, but I don't know. It just never quite hit me in the same way as when you're laying it out here. So what you're saying is that he had to experience both sides before he was going to finally find Beth again. That makes sense. And we've talked about yin and yang before with Beth and Daryl because they we saw black and white ties, right? We saw black and white shoelaces on Beth, and then Daryl had the black and white ties around his legs. So yeah, I really like that. Good job. Thank you. I answered this one here, but she asked, I didn't really follow Khan's Q&A yet, but did anyone ever ask what Beth meant by I get it now before she was shot? That's something I want to know, but couldn't find the answer. And so I just answered here. I remember them asking this in the TTD after Coda aired, but the answer she gave was supremely unsatisfactory and not terribly relevant. She just parroted something Gimple had also said, that Beth maybe became a little too overconfident in that moment when she stabbed Dawn. And that was just something that Gimple was saying in other interviews, and then Emily started saying it. So again, more evidence that there are talking points in what they can and cannot say, right? But that doesn't directly address what she was thinking when she said that. So while people have asked, in my mind, we've never really gotten the answer. They either say things that don't make much sense or redirect to something else. In other words, they're avoiding the question. So it's been asked, but it's not necessarily been answered. All right, I think that's it for the YouTube comments. Let's go over and get one or two asks before I wrap up for today. Obadella 2. So there's been a couple of weird, interesting interviews coming out of Comic-Con, but I wanted to draw your attention to this one, TV Insider interview. Gimple says something seemingly out of left field. When we were doing TWD Season 4, there was a recipe from the Adventures of Pete and Pete that we were following. Sad, funny, strange, beautiful, scary. He just randomly brings up TWD Season 4 while promoting the Daryl Dixon show and referencing an old Nickelodeon show out of nowhere. I mean, he's got to be trolling us, right? LOL. There's also some other weirdness at the end where they were talking about the upcoming season of Ride, which will be airing at the same time as DDS3. Scott Gimple is going to be a guest on the show, and then Melissa says she will be in it and that she was very happy to be part of that episode specifically in some way, shape, or form. The way she said it is pretty odd, actually, but anyway, just thought it might be interesting viewing. So yeah, I kind of already addressed the Melissa thing. Definitely weird. But yeah, I'm glad that you actually wrote out what he said. I had a few people send me this because he mentioned Season 4, and I could tell that some of them weren't interpreting what he said quite correctly. So I'm glad that we have it laid out here. He's basically just talking about a recipe they use for great storytelling, which is to make it funny, sad, funny, strange, beautiful, and then scary. So that in and of itself isn't much, but yeah, I agree that it's really strange that he brought up Season 4. Even if this is something they specifically used in Season 4, why bring up that season specifically? It's like, you didn't use that in other seasons? I'm sure you use the same recipes all the time to try to make the story good, so why bring up Season 4? And the other thing that we could connect there is that Season 4 was really more of a Beth and Daryl season than Season 5. I mean, we always think of Season 5 as being a big Beth season because that's when everything happened. But they were specifically together in Season 4, and we actually had them interacting a lot more than we got in Season 5. We got like 5 minutes in Season 5, right? So if he's bringing that up in conjunction with Daryl Dixon Season 3, if he's specifically describing the season with that, that could be a big hint, that we're going to see more of that kind of interaction in this season that we saw in season 4. At least that's how I'm choosing to interpret that, and I'm hoping that's what he means. So yeah, thank you so much for sending that in. Is he trolling us? I never like to think of the writers as trolling us. I just think of it as they're dropping hints. And um, again, I can get into this with, when I talk about the clips later on. But there was one where I think it was Norman who answered, not Gimple, but it might as well have been Gimple because, whatever Norman knows, Gimple knows. The interviewer asked about fan theories and said, how aware are you of fan theories about X, Y, and Z? And of course, they weren't about Beth and Daryl. She was asking about, Daryl Carol theories and where the show is going theories and what's going on with Rick theories and just all the theories the fans have. And she said, how aware are you of those? And he answered very firmly, unequivocally. He goes, oh, very aware. Okay, guys, that's the answer right there. They are aware of us. If they're aware of all the other theories, they are aware of TD. And they just told us that they were. So I remember going, haha, there it is, an admission. So yeah, I don't think they're trolling us. I think they're dropping hints. And as WD Way likes to say, most of the GA is not picking up on these kinds of hints, but we are. So they're kind of for us. Thank you. All right, next one. Pretty sure you've heard by now, but Daryl Dixon ends in season 4. When I heard the news, I was sad, nervous, and honestly felt pretty hopeless. Oh, don't feel that way. Am I the only one that thinks this looks really bad for TD and AMC especially? It had to have been AMC's decision to end Daryl Dixon early. Weren't there rumors or plans for the spinoff to go on for about 8 seasons? Rumors maybe, but not plans. I'll come back to that. Regardless, I think this decision was a mistake. I really don't want the ending of Daryl Dixon to be rushed, which I'm pretty sure is going to happen since the news broke out. Now the rewrites or reshoots for Daryl Dixon season 3 are starting to make more sense. I'm pretty much convinced and hoping that Beth has memory loss, otherwise it'd be very far-fetched to explain why she never looked or found TF and somehow made her way to Europe. So how are they supposed to fit the surprise of Beth's return into the season finale? Also convinced that's when it'll happen, even before finding out DDS4 is the last season, and fit what happened to Beth after all this time and explain whatever current situation she's in, have that situation resolved since it can't be easy in order to be interesting, and develop Bethel's relationship enough to not only be romantic, but make the GA understand that Beth is Daryl's happy ending all in one season. Okay, when you put it like that, that is a lot, I will give you, okay? But don't worry. Let me finish reading what you wrote here. Disappointed by this news is an understatement. Or do you think I'm being pessimistic? What do you think of this news? Do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing for TD? I'm really curious about your take on all of this. Here's to hoping that Beth gets her own spinoff, although I'm assuming it would have to include Daryl at some point, which wouldn't make that much sense. They ended his spinoff early. Okay. So yeah, let's talk about this because so many people are seeing this as a bad thing. I mean, on the one hand, I don't see it as a good or a bad thing. I'm quite neutral about it. I just think that the way that they are delivering the story to us is changing. And that's happened before. They ended the flagship show because of streaming rights and contracts, and this is probably a business decision too, that this is just the best way to tell the story. Either way, I don't think that we're going to be gypped on the story. That's what everyone seems to be afraid of, that it's going to be rushed, that we're not going to get it, that she's not going to return. And you guys, I'm not worried about that at all. We're going to get the story that we want. It just may not all play out in the spinoff. So what's been coming out of Comic-Con is them over and over and over again saying that there's more story to tell and that the end of the spinoff is not going to be the end of the character. And there's been talk about bringing all of the characters, the super group, I really liked calling it that, meaning Maggie, Rick and Michonne, Daryl, Carol, and probably a lot of the characters who are still at the Commonwealth. I hope we see a lot of them again because I love a lot of them. They're going to bring them back into a single show. So that's what I'm thinking is going to happen. So the other thing is that Isabelle has said many times in the interviews that come out of Comic-Con that they were pretty much always planning for this 4-season arc. Now, he does say that they batted around ideas for different places in Europe they could possibly take it, but it sounds to me like at least for the last 2 or 3 years, they've known that there would be 2 seasons, a 2-season arc in France and then a 2-season arc in Spain, and then they were going to end it. So they have actually, even though it seems like they just suddenly decided to do this and are telling everybody, I don't think that's the case. I think they've been planning that for a long time, and this is just when they're letting the audience know that this is the format it's going to take. So it's kind of similar to when they tried to make us think that they decided in episode 7 to kill Beth, and then she got killed off in episode 8. You guys, I've proven over and over and over again that that cannot possibly be the truth. There is foreshadowing for exactly what happened in Grady, exactly the way her arm fell when she hit the ground in season 4. So even if the actors didn't know what was going on that early, trust me, the writers did. Gimple knew at least back in season 4. So he knew in Still, when they were filming Still, that Beth was going to get shot at Grady and exactly how her arm would fall when she hit the floor. And if he knew in Still, well, Still was planned from the beginning of season 4 because we had the Bethyl hug in episode 1. So there's no way that they decided in episode 7 to shoot her in episode 8. That just doesn't make sense. It's a misdirection. Okay. It's a way for them to make us think she's gone when she's really not. Okay. But they plan way earlier than that. They never do anything at the last minute. So you've got to stop believing that, even if they present it that way, because it is a misdirection. So let me look at your more specific questions here. I'm not worried about this. You say memory loss. Okay, so how are they supposed to fit everything in? I'm not sure that they're going to fit everything in. I think that the only thing that's been promised thematically is that this is how he will find his happy ending. So I think he's going to find Beth in this series. I don't know that we will get their full romance right away. It could be that they decided that he will find her and then they will continue the story in, whatever iteration is next, the flagship show, or, whatever they end up doing. So let me give you a possible, it's kind of headcanon, but it's just also a possible way this could play out. I've said before that I still think there's something fishy and some more story to tell around the people that actually kidnapped Daryl on the ship. And then, the ship blew up, he got off, etc. But I feel like that could come back into it. It also might have to do with whatever organization Beth is with that we are not really privy to yet. We don't know. But what if it's something like they find each other, they maybe have some story together and the beginnings of the romance as they get to know one another, or if if she does have memory loss and he has to help her remember things, so we might only get that far, whatever it is, and then something happens, and what if she gets taken again and they get separated again and she gets taken back to Georgia, which is why we've seen her filming things in Georgia, or I guess we haven't seen her filming things, sorry. She's been in Georgia while, near the set, and we've had some theories about that. And so then the flagship show, maybe the spinoff will end there. We're going to know that she's his happy ending by that point. It's going to be obvious. So the show will have fulfilled on its theme, but then they're going to move it to a different vehicle, a different show that maybe has more of the characters in it to continue the story. You see what I mean? Now, obviously, I have no idea if that's what's going to happen, but it very easily could. And I think it's going to be something like that. So I think we'll get a lot of story depending on when she shows up in Daryl Dixon. But we may not get all of it, and that's okay because it means that they're just going to continue it elsewhere. So I'm not worried about it. Let's see. They could do a spinoff, as you say, to get her backstory. That would be pretty cool. But I think the main thing they have to establish, first of all, they have to have her return. We have to see her. He has to see her. And they have to establish that she is his soulmate and his happy ending. But that's it. That's the only thing they really have to get into the spinoff, and then the rest can take place in a different show. So maybe they'll pull it off and they will actually get all of it into the spinoff, or maybe they won't and we'll see it elsewhere. But either way, they've been very vocal about saying they are going to tell the story they set up for, and they frickin' set up for the story in season 4. So it would be ridiculous to just decide to end now. But Gimple also said that he's got plenty of things in production, plenty of ideas. He says some of it is experimental and others, are more in line with the main thread of the show that viewers love and are kind of hooked on. And that there's a lot more story to tell. So I don't see this as a bad thing. I don't see it as it's going to be rushed. I don't see it as we're not going to get the story we want. Quite the opposite. This just tells me that they've got plans, that things are moving along, and we just have to sit back and let it unfold for us. So I hope that makes you feel better. And I'm not worried about it. I'm just here for it. I'm just along for the ride. All right, guys, I'm going to end this video there, and I will be back in a few days with another one.